Hello, my soul brothers and soul sisters. This is the Ron Smith Investigate Show, where we separate the real from fake, the fact from fiction, and give you the winner's edge. And sometimes we're able to turn your water into wines. And I want to wish all the graduates congratulations. And we're going to talk about the talk. And we're going to talk about from high school, going to get ready to go to college, and the college graduates. Congratulations. And one of the things that you need to have your students prepared for, and this from high school going getting ready to college, is that hopefully you have a credit card where you can use as them as authorized users. And one of the things before we get started is that the quote for the day is, if you cannot remember the past, you're condemned to repeat it. If you don't remember the past, you're condemned to repeat it. And one of the things that we want to ensure that our high school graduates have everything they need, from, tuitions already taken care of. And hopefully you have scholarships, grants, loans already secured. And those are one of the things that from naturally get your children into the university of their choice, and they'll be able to sustain themselves and focus on their academic achievement, or if they are athletes, a student athlete, they'll be able to maintain those their focus on that. Now, one thing is about being an authorized user. Part of the talk education, which is financial literacy that we are discussing today, is that they have to realize that that card is for emergencies only, which means that basically only 30% of that card should be used for in case of emergency, and they should have other savings and checkings accounts as backup. And whether they are living in the dorm or living off campus, there has to be a budget set aside, and they have to understand that budget. And one of the things that I went through with two of my children, which are adults now, is that look in hindsight, I should have a incidental budget of things that pop up, and there's a accidental budget, which means basically, if they don't want to go to the cafeteria and they just want to go to Taco Bell, et cetera, et cetera. So those are one of the things that you need to have in place. And what is that time of the year where, they have different fall break, winter break, spring break, or coming home for homecoming? That is some things that you need to consider in your budget. So basically, one of the things that if I can go back in time to do, is that I would have cash set aside instead of using the credit card for everything. When you set aside them, let's say that if I know my budget is that I'm going to spend is $1,000. So I take out that $1,000, and I'm not going to go back into the checking or savings account, and I'm going to use that. My formula was the 40, 30, 20, 10. And I would do the same thing for either my high school, going to college, graduate, and they would understand what that is. So it's only a certain amount of cash that they have per month that they know, and it is tangible, that they can actually see it. Because when you give them a credit card, they can't actually see the transaction, and things can be, get out of control very quickly. And one of the things as high school to college, you still have that parental control and parental relationship. So they are quasi adults. Let's talk about from graduating from college. One of the things that I learned is that my role change is from being the parental or having parental consent to do certain things to being an advisor. And that's, I found it very easy for me to do, but I'm going to just speak on my significant other as my wife. was kind of hard to make that transition from being the parent to the advisor, but it's very important because basically they are going to have to make some decisions on their own, and we need to help them along the way as advisors instead of actually tell them what to do, which means that from getting their first apartment, whether they're going to have roommates or not, or getting that car or new car, or even making that career move. And prayerfully, they will move in from graduation to a career that basically they can be self-sustaining and lean on you less and less financially. And that should be part of the talk and from high school to college prior to what profession you actually going into, and whether it's going to be a private university or state university, and what type of degree aspiration that your kid have. Now, there are certain degrees that they are high income degrees, and there's degrees that that's not as lucrative as others, and that's one of the things that should be considered. I know there's an adage that you should do the things that you love, but at the same time, when you're talking about higher education, there is an investment, and there's a ROI, a return on that investment also. And I will get into that in a little later, probably in another episode, where should I go to a private university versus a state university to get the same degree? A private university, normally it costs more than a state university. So when I get the same diploma to go to a career, will I get the same return on investment? That's a very interesting conversation that we probably need to take more time on it. Now, one of the things that I know for sure is that whether you get scholarships, loans, or grants, do you co-sign on those things, or do you actually get a loan in your own name? And I probably need to take more time on that, because basically, if you co-sign it, that means that basically you are certifying that whether that student pay for it or not, you are responsible for that. And that's something that you need to consider. And once an individual move out and get on their own, make sure that they have a budget that's set aside to whatever career that status that they are going to obtain. And will they ask you for a personal loan to subsidize what they are doing? Now, one of the things I've heard parents actually drew up a contract, to help their students to get this apartment, maybe get upgrade in their car, or is it going to be a verbal agreement? And one of the things that you need to know is that that's when that parental or coaching type advisory role that you are newly minted in, once they walk across that stage that you're in. One of the things that also 6% of the college graduates after 6 months move back home. Now, that could be advantageous for you and them, which means basically is that if that person, your child, move back to your home, you need to set aside some things that, even though this individual is an adult, they're still at home living with you. So there have to be some rules and regulations that basically you're going to have to discuss prior. And sometimes that could be a very emotional conversation. And sometimes we don't take a lot of depth in that because we assume that this individual, and I say your child, and I give myself, for example, I couldn't wait to leave home. So there was no me moving back for me. but there, since the generations has changed, now it probably, you can't even get your child off the cell phone or off the video game. So that's a in-depth conversation that you need to have. So congratulations to the high school graduates. Congratulations to the college graduate. And I look forward to you making a change in this country and this generation. One of the things that second thing I want to talk to you about is what's been hot in the news is called the debt ceiling. And the debt ceiling is a restriction on how much the federal government can borrow and pay its bills and allocate its funds for future investment. And that is a very political, controversial debate going on right now. And I feel that a lot of Americans are walking around today, it doesn't understand how that actually affect them. That is really a big deal. Now, I know that you heard that we had never defaulted on our debt before, and this would be a very historical and a hysterical catastrophe if that ever happened. But we have seen a lot of firsts in this country in the last couple of years. So I am not as comfortable as what the media is trying to let us in on, that it has never happened before. We have seen a lot of things in the past couple of years that never happened before. Now, what is the debt ceiling? Basically, we're talking about paying our bills. What is the national debt? And basically, the national debt is money that we already had borrowed to cover outstanding expenses in the last 5 years. So basically, we are talking about our past money that we have spent, whether we're talking about the social, economic issues, military, foreign aid, et cetera, et cetera. Now, right now, national debt is at $31.46 trillion. How that it actually affect you is that basically we have a number of retirees. So we're talking about federal government retirees payment will be affected by that. We're talking about Social Security checks to our seniors will be affected by that. We are talking about this could turn us into a recession if this debt is not, we don't have a confirmation on that. It would be a major hit to downgrade our credit rating internationally. And we'd be paying higher taxes for everything. So basically, that is how this national debt will affect us individually. And we need to make sure that we talk to our congressmen or congresswomen, our senators, to make sure that they have your best interest. This is not a time to sit on the sideline and be lackadaisical, because if this actually happens, and it always at first, we talk about it never happened before, but it's always a first, and we need to make sure that it doesn't happen on our watch. Now, let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about reparations, which is another hot button issue that we've been having in our nation.
I can tell you my problems, meditating my silence, but I keep pushing my pen, rotating my stylus. Brokenness feeling like sin, now no breath, low dollar. Used to be left on red, now all the girls go holler. Now all the girls go follow, all the fake fans gon' pile up. I need peace to borrow, get that shit right back tomorrow. Somehow all the fans go bravo, smile so much to hide my sorrows. Faith is shaky in vibrato. I can't hold a frown too long, I can't stay down too long. Look, running from
Hello, my soul brothers and soul sisters. I am Ron Smith, and this is the Ron Smith Investigating Show, where we separate the real from fake, the fact from fiction, and give you the winner's edge. Right now, we have last few minutes, we talked about our college and high school graduates, and I've said congratulations, understanding that basically you as parents or guardians, you are now in a different role. If you have a high school student going to college, you still have that parental guidance, in place. But now, if they have moved on from college graduates, now you have some adults, and basically your role has changed. And basically, you are an advisor, and hopefully, some of the things that you have said and things that you have done, they will have picked up on those things, and they will be able to put those things in place. So be ready at any times to answer questions, and just make sure you just keep in touch and with that communication. So one of the things that I know for sure is that as I move from college and going to career wise, I probably need more guidance at that time, because then you get out in the real world and realize that you really don't know what you thought you knew, because you was under the umbrella, either from under an umbrella of the university world, which is its own little world, and you still have your parents doing a lot of things financially, but now those things are on you. So now we're going to shift to another hot topic, because what I call a topic that time has came, and we want to talk about reparation. And reparation is making amends for a wrong one has done by paying money or otherwise helping those who have been wrong. Slavery is an issue that we have to focus and talk about head on. It has been an elephant in the room for over 400 years. And apparently, everybody really is not equipped to talk about it without being emotional. And one of the things that, if you do your study, you understand why it is necessary. And one of the things that I want to bring out before the end is that this is nothing new for America to pay reparations. And I'm going to talk about that a little later. So one of the things that, and I wanted to say one of my heroes is Frederick Douglass, because he was part of the spearhead of this whole movement of the Freedom Bureau. And one of the things that he was an advisor to President Lincoln. So after the Civil War had ended, under Lincoln's administration, he promised Black former slaves land. The Secretary of War at that time was Edwin Stanton, and he advised the Union General William Sherman to talk to 20 Black pastors in Savannah, Georgia. And the lead pastor was Garrison Frazier. And what they had come up with is what we wanted. And speaking of that time, former Black slave wanted their own land to live within their own community, to be self-sufficient. One of the minutes from that meeting was published in the New York Daily Tribune in February 13th in 1865. It was also published in a Black publication called the Christian Recorder, which recorded the minutes from that meeting. And basically, Lincoln established Field Order 15. Field Order 15 was 400 acres of former Confederate land divided into 40 acres. And basically, you heard the cliche 40 acres and a mule. So basically, this is the genesis from what that was. So from Charleston, South Carolina to St. John's River in Florida, and part of Sea Island, Georgia, was part of this. Actually, it was 400,000 acres. So basically, the genesis of that was once the first 1,000 slaves, former slaves, were given that property, they worked the land so well. The General Sherman said, "What if we give them a mule to work that land? If they can do this just by human effort alone. So basically, they would start doing the 40 acres plus the mule. So basically, that's where the cliche came from. Now, this was in February, remember, of 1865. If you are a historian, and I'm going to remind you, President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in April 1865. So once upon his assassination, the president-elect was Andrew Jackson, who rescinded Field Order 15. So basically, what he did after he rescinded it, he gave the land back to the former Confederate plantation owners. And that's how pretty much we lost that piece of freedom, history, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that you have to understand, and I'm quite sure you do, being in the 21st century, is what use of freedom if you don't have a financial foundation to build on? Because that is what we are talking about right now. We're talking about the reason why there was never a level playing field for former slaves, because of this act. Because after the land was taken from them, the livelihood or the employment that they had was farming. So they went back to either being tenement farmers or sharecroppers. And since basically they didn't have the seeds to plant in the land, they had to borrow the money. And I have to tell you about the, being hoodwinked and bamboozled and led astray about the planters at that time. So you were never really able to establish yourself financially while you're working somebody else's land, because the percentage of you paying off your old debt and trying to save for a new was never possible. So I want to really talk about what is today in the 21st century. One of the things that the state of California, they established a reparation task force, which they voted recommending that more than $1 million to every eligible single Black resident of California that will, and because of the impact of slavery. Texas, New York, and Vermont is also considering the same legislation. Now, one of the things I want to express what that looked like. One of the things that I read an article about 2 weeks ago, and Dr. Phil of the Dr. Phil show, the spinoff from Oprah, he said basically he didn't agree with that because there was not financial education literacy. Because if the Black people get that $300,000 to $1 million, they will give it right back. And I had a discussion over this weekend with a young man who I'm going to invite on the show real soon. He's been working with finances over 40 years, and he's an investment advisor. He said that should never be the initial conversation, because once you tell people what they can't do before you give it to them, then that depletes the conversation with people saying what you can't do before you get it. He said, let's talk about the education part after we get it, because the fight has really been up front, whether we should deserve it or not. So I want to talk about what it looks like, and then I want to talk about the history of this country actually paying reparations. Okay, what would it look like? We're talking about whether it's cash, housing assistance, lower tuition for education, student loans being paid for, job training, community investment. One of the things I want to end with, the Office of Redress Administration, OR, was established in 1988. and was a minister in a 10-year program to provide tax-free restitution payment of $20,000 to eligible individual of Japanese ancestry for the fundamental injustice of evacuation, relocation, and internment during World War II. And this was 1988. So basically, the Civil Liberty Act of 1988 gave surviving Japanese American reparations and a formal apology by President Reagan for their incarceration during World War II. That equal to $1.6 billion. So basically, each of those descendants that were awarded $20,000. So the Japanese American lost over 400 million in property during their internment. So if you're talking about from December 1941 to June 1946, they were eligible for $1.6 billion, and we were enslaved over 400 years. I will let you do the math on that. So let's talk more about reparation, because we need to understand, in order for us to bring healing into this nation, there has to be at some time a point where America will look itself in its face and understand that basically this nation was built on the backs of slaves, and everything that was produced with slave labor. And all the major corporations in this nation were enhanced from that labor, from the universities to the business, even to the religious organizations, etc. Everybody benefited from the employment of slaves in this nation, except the slave descendants themselves. So let's keep the conversation going. This is Ron Smith, and this has been Ron Smith Investigating. And my time is up, and I thank you for yours.